It is too difficult to predict future mortgage rates, but we can look at the past to give us an idea of how low they might go in the future. Today's 30-year fixed mortgage rates, averaging close to 6.5%, appear to be abnormally elevated, especially compared to the rates we experienced over the past 15 years. But if you look at rates back to 1970, today's rates appear to be reasonable. Looking ahead, while considering the past 55 years, I would say that rates dropping close to 5% is possible over the next several months. However, knowing that the response to recent economic crises was the primary driver behind rates dropping below 4%, it is unlikely rates will drop this low again since we can't count on another economic crisis happening. Let's take a closer look. Freddie Mac publishes average mortgage rates going back to 1970. Today's average 30-year fixed is 6.58%. If you compare this to past rates, you'll see that today's rate is lower than the rates during almost all of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. We don't see rates below 6% until the early 2000s. And even then, average rates don't dip below 5% until 2009 during the subprime mortgage crisis. Average rates generally stay below 5% and then dip below 3% during the COVID pandemic. So what happened? This slide shows average rates of inflation going back to 1970. Inflation dropped to historic lows after 2009 and stayed there until 2021. Generally speaking, mortgage rates track with inflation, but that doesn't entirely explain why rates drop so low. So now let's look at the Federal Reserve's interest rates. The Federal Reserve manages the country's money supply and sets short-term interest rates. You can see that in response to the two economic crises in '08 and 2020, it dropped interest rates to near zero. It is important to note that the Federal Reserve does not directly set mortgage rates, but it can take extra steps to attempt to do this indirectly, which it did from 2009 through 2014, and then again during COVID by purchasing mortgage-backed securities. The Federal Reserve's two actions during a period of low inflation, a combination of events that had never happened before, drove mortgage rates to historic lows in the twos and threes. So how low could mortgage rates go from here? If history is any guide, then it looks like rates as low as 5% are quite possible, as in 2003 when the Federal Reserve dropped rates to 1% while we were enjoying very low inflation. Can we get there today? I think that two things would have to happen. Inflation would have to drop back to 2%, which hasn't quite yet happened, and the Federal Reserve would have to lower its rates dramatically. The Federal Reserve appears to be waiting for inflation to drop further before reducing rates a lot lower. But this is a plausible scenario that could happen again in the near future. Could mortgage rates drop well below 5% again? It's difficult to speculate, but I think not only would we need lower inflation and much lower rates from the Federal Reserve, but we would need one more thing: significant purchases of mortgage-backed securities. It will likely take another economic crisis on par with COVID for this to happen. In summary, using history as a guide, mortgage rates dropping to 5% is very possible. Below 4% into the twos and threes? Unlikely, unless we have another economic crisis. Thank you for visiting Your Mortgage Strategy. I hope to see you again soon.